When a monumental structure vanishes, we are left with a myth of its greatness and a romanticized mystery of its demise. But architectural permanence is an illusion, and the pursuit of unprecedented scale is a dangerous trade-off. The very ambition that makes a building legendary, its complexity, its material expense, its sheer size, also creates the precise vulnerabilities that guarantee its destruction. This is not a tour of lost wonders. It is a forensic investigation into architectural mortality. Our analysis begins with a decision tree. When a structure collapses, we must first determine the agent of its failure. Was it an inherent flaw in the system, a failure of engineering where the laws of physics were miscalculated or ignored? Was it an environmental catastrophe, where seismic events or natural disasters overwhelmed a design that was fundamentally unprepared? Or was it an act of human agency, where political instability, war, or simple malice turned a monument into a target? By examining the evidence in each case, we move past the legends to diagnose the cold mechanics of collapse, revealing how structures built to be eternal became predictable points of failure. The first case file opens in Alexandria, 3rd century BCE. The city's harbor was a death trap of submerged rocks. The solution proposed by Ptolemy II was not a prayer to Poseidon, but a machine, the Pharos lighthouse. This was the first major structure in history built not for worship or ego, but for a single technological purpose: to save lives. Its design was a system, a 140-meter tower, the height of a modern 45-story building, was constructed from massive blocks of white marble. It stood in 3 distinct sections: a square base, an octagonal middle, and a cylindrical top. The true innovation, however, was its optical engine. Legends spoke of a magic eye or a concentrated beam of divine anger capable of incinerating enemy ships. The reality was a feat of applied physics. At the tower's apex, behind a massive bonfire, engineers installed a system of concave mirrors forged from polished bronze. The curvature of these surfaces was precisely calculated to collect the scattered light from the fire and focus it into a single, dense beam. This beam was reportedly visible up to 50 kilometers away, a testament to engineering, not mysticism. But the design had a fatal vulnerability. The lighthouse stood for over 500 years, surviving dozens of wars, but it was built in a seismically active zone. Its rigid stone construction was inherently brittle against the sheer forces of an earthquake. The system began to fail in 956 AD, when major tremors caused significant structural cracks. A series of subsequent earthquakes inflicted further damage, until a final, catastrophic event in 1323 AD completed the destruction. The ruins tumbled into the harbor, transitioning from a global landmark to underwater debris. For 500 years, the lighthouse was dismissed as a legend. Then, in 1994, French archaeologist Jean-Yves Empereur and his dive team found the proof. At a depth of just 6 meters, they discovered enormous stone blocks, some weighing 70 tons, alongside fragments of columns and statues. The machine was real. Its wreckage is now part of the seabed. While the Pharos failed as a rigid stone system, our next case examines a structure lost not to seismic shock, but to its own intrinsic value and material fragility. The Amber Room was not a building, but a treasure masquerading as architecture. Its walls were paneled with over 6 tons of carved amber, fossilized tree resin. Choosing amber for construction is a deliberate trade-off, sacrificing all structural integrity for unparalleled aesthetic opulence. It was a room designed to be priceless, and therefore designed to be stolen. This inherent weakness defined its fate. Amber is brittle, sensitive to temperature, and prone to crumbling. When German forces advanced on the Catherine Palace in 1941, Soviet curators deemed the panels too fragile to move, fearing they would disintegrate from vibrations during transport. Their attempt to camouflage the room with wallpaper failed. A specialized Nazi unit, fully aware of its location and value, professionally dismantled the entire room in a methodical 36-hour operation. The panels were packed into crates and shipped to Königsberg Castle for reassembly. This was not random looting. It was a precision extraction. There, it was last seen intact. The official record states the room was incinerated when the castle was shelled and burned in 1945. But the forensic evidence contradicts this neat conclusion. Amber is organic. When 6 tons of it burns, it produces a massive volume of dense, acrid smoke with an unmistakable pine resin odor. Multiple eyewitnesses to the castle fire confirmed no such smell. This single sensory detail casts extreme doubt on the official story. The room was likely moved before the fire. The recovery of an original mosaic from the room in Germany in the 1990s proves at least parts of it were separated and survived. The room wasn't vaporized. It was atomized. Its immense value ensured it was broken apart, with most panels likely decaying into dust in damp basements, victims of neglect, not a final fiery end. Where the amber room was dismantled piece by piece, our next structure was annihilated in a single catastrophic event. The Crystal Palace, a symbol of Victorian Britain's industrial might, demonstrates a different kind of failure, one where advanced design creates its own unique, fatal vulnerability. Built for the Great Exhibition of 1851, it was the world's first major modular building, a testament to modernity assembled from cast iron and nearly 300,000 panes of glass. It was perceived as a fireproof structure. This assumption was incorrect. The building's core design flaw was hidden from sight. To level the vast exhibition floor, its architect laid millions of wooden floorboards over a continuous, hollow space. This created a network of voids running the entire 564-meter length of the building. These were not just empty spaces. They were perfectly engineered aerodynamic chimneys, waiting for a spark. On November 30th, 1936, that spark arrived. A small fire, reportedly starting from a minor electrical fault or a discarded cigarette in an office, ignited the dry, aged timber of the floor. The fire spread with impossible speed, fed by the constant supply of oxygen funneled through the subfloor voids. It became a self-sustaining inferno. The materials of modernity failed under the extreme thermal stress. The immense heat caused the cast iron support columns to lose their tensile strength, buckle, and melt. The glass panes, which gave the palace its name, did not contain the blaze. They shattered violently, creating a blizzard of incandescent shards that rained down as the structure collapsed. The glow was visible 80 kilometers away. The Crystal Palace wasn't destroyed by a simple fire. It was consumed by a blaze that its own innovative design had perfected. The paradox is that the very features that made it a modern marvel, its scale and rapid construction, also made it a perfect furnace. From industrial iron and glass, we turn to organic wood and silk. Where the Crystal Palace was a single hall, the Tang Dynasty's Daming Palace was a sprawling city within a city, an architectural statement of power so vast its scale borders on mythological. This was not a building. It was a 2-square-kilometer political ecosystem, over 4 times the size of Beijing's Forbidden City. The hubris was not just in its footprint, but in its engineering. Its grand halls were assembled without metal fasteners, using a sophisticated system of interlocking wooden brackets called dugong. This technique allowed for immense, ornate roofs to be supported by massive timber columns, demonstrating incredible craftsmanship. It also meant the entire complex was a single, continuous fuel source. This monumental scale was its primary vulnerability. A palace designed as the celestial center of the world becomes a singular target for anyone wishing to destroy that world. Its existence was tied directly to the stability of the dynasty that built it. In 881 AD, during the Huang Chao rebellion, that political system collapsed. The rebels didn't just capture the capital. They systematically erased its most potent symbol. The wooden city, built over decades, became a colossal pyre. The fire burned for weeks, consuming the cedar columns, silk-lined walls, and priceless state archives. The architectural expression of imperial power was annihilated by political volatility. By the 10th century, nothing remained but scorched earth. The capital was abandoned, and the palace ruins were buried, eventually becoming indistinct hills where farmers grew crops, unaware of the foundations beneath their feet. For centuries, historical accounts of its size were treated as exaggeration. That changed in the mid-20th century. Archaeological excavations unearthed foundations that perfectly matched the dimensions described in ancient texts. Investigators found the massive stone plinths for the columns, confirming the legends of its impossible scale were not legends. They were forensic facts. The palace proves that when a structure is built to embody a political system, its survival is dependent on that system's permanence. When the dynasty fell, the palace was not just destroyed, it was executed. Where political volatility executed a palace of wood, the laws of physics toppled a god of metal. After the people of Rhodes survived a massive siege in 305 BCE, they sold the enemy's abandoned war machines to finance a monument to their victory. The result was the Colossus, a 33-meter-tall bronze statue of the sun god Helios. It was intended as a symbol of freedom, but its collapse serves as a case study in structural miscalculation. First, the iconic image of the Colossus straddling the harbor is a fantasy, a romantic invention from later centuries. Modern structural analysis confirms this stance would have been impossible. The immense weight of the iron framework and bronze cladding, distributed over such a wide, unsupported span, would have caused the statue to buckle and collapse under its own load. It would have blocked the very harbor it was meant to celebrate. Forensic logic dictates it stood on a single marble pedestal on land, overlooking the water. The true engineering error was internal and absolute. The statue was built around a rigid iron skeleton, to which shaped bronze plates were attached. Its engineer, Chairs of Lindos, created a top-heavy structure with a critical vulnerability. He failed to account for dynamic loads. The iron of the period was brittle, and the rigid frame possessed no flexibility to dissipate the energy from wind shear or seismic tremors. In 226 BCE, only 54 years after its completion, an earthquake struck Rhodes. The ground shook, the unyielding frame could not bend, and the statue snapped at its weakest structural point, the knees. The bronze god crashed to the earth. For almost 9 centuries, its massive ruins lay where they fell, a tourist attraction famous for its scale. Its end was not mythical but transactional. In 654 AD, Arab forces captured the island, saw not a fallen wonder but a resource, and dismantled the remains. The scrap metal was sold to a merchant, who, according to historical accounts, required a caravan of 900 camels to haul it away. The monument wasn't felled by an angry god. It was a predictable structural failure, its raw materials ultimately reclaimed by commerce. Our final case file moves beyond engineering flaws and political collapse to a more intimate form of destruction. The Temple of Artemis at Ephesus was not felled by an earthquake or a rebellion, but by a single man's desire for fame. Its destruction is a forensic study in the malice of legacy, where the vulnerability wasn't structural but psychological. Built over 120 years from pure white marble, the temple was 4 times the size of Athens' Parthenon. Its scale presented immense engineering challenges, particularly how to place the massive, fragile marble architraves atop 20-meter-high columns without shattering them. The solution was ingenious. Builders would place the heavy blocks on top of tightly packed sandbags, then slowly release the sand, allowing the stone to settle gently and precisely into place. The structure was considered one of the safest places in the ancient world, a divine bank where kings and merchants stored their wealth, believing no one would dare profane the goddess's home. That belief was proven false on a single night in 356 BCE. A local man named Herostratus set the temple ablaze. He wasn't a thief or a foreign agent. His motive, confessed under torture, was simply to ensure his name would be remembered forever. He had identified the temple's single point of failure. While its walls and columns were stone, its massive roof was framed with cedar timber, likely treated with oil to protect it from moisture. The structure ignited like a torch. In response to this act of pure ego, the authorities of Ephesus issued a damnatio memoriae, officially forbidding anyone from ever speaking Herostratus's name, under penalty of death. The temple was rebuilt even grander than before, but its ultimate demise was a slow, protracted process. It was first plundered by Goths in 268 AD. Later, as Christianity displaced the old pagan faiths, the temple lost its religious purpose and protection. It became a public quarry. Its precious marble was stripped away to build new cathedrals and civic buildings. The foundations, set in marshy soil, slowly sank until the entire site vanished beneath mud and silt. It was only rediscovered in 1869. Today, a single lonely column, assembled from recovered fragments, stands on the site, a monument not just to the temple, but to the fact that the most durable structures can be undone by the most fragile of things, a human ego. The forensic evidence from these cases reveals a single verdict. Each monumental failure, from the Colossus of Rhodes to the Crystal Palace, stemmed from the same core delusion, the belief that it was an exception. Builders assumed their ambition could suspend the laws of physics, the volatility of politics, or the predictability of human nature. This arrogance is the true agent of destruction. Architectural mortality isn't a mystery. It's a correction. The cycle of construction and erasure is simply the planet reclaiming raw materials, waiting for the next grand structure built on the same flawed premise of permanence.